by rocks and fire, tires being burnt up and people, dragging burnt up tires, police officers shooting tear gas canisters. And on the second page, one particular story, one particular photo that actually made the trends around social media, a photo by Celia Kiplagat of The Nation. Police officer lobs a tear gas canister at demonstrators onto a better street yesterday, right here in Nairobi. Quite a brilliant photo there. And other brilliant photos right here, just showing you what really happened in Nairobi and other parts of the country. You can take a look at that. And the second page, or rather the fourth page, as Raila shuts down city, Ruto stares him down. So Raila Odinga, holed up in a city hotel for the better part of the day yesterday, emerged late in the day to the raucous chaos of tear gas and water cannons. In the battle for the soul of the nation, two political heavyweights are once again staring each other down. One has access to state instruments of violence. The other believes his power rests with the masses. Again, who will blink first? So we could take a look at that story right there. Quite extensive to the fifth page, where there's a particular insert there says tactics. Police blocked protesters from accessing the central business district. Just to read a bit of that for you. When he announced the demonstrations, Azimio leader Raila Odinga had said he will lead a march to State House. On Sunday, he had indicated that the protesters will meet at the Kenya International Convention Center. Before marching to State House, the police were therefore determined to keep both Mr. Odinga and the protesters from accessing the CBD. The police blocked several key roads to achieve this objective. To contain protesters from Kibera, the police blocked the access to Ngong Road, Langata and the Southern Bypass. When Mr. Odinga attempted to march to the CBD after leaving Serena Hotel on Kenyatta Avenue, he was repulsed by the police. He was forced to go into Upper Hill, from where he found his way to Eastlands. And I can literally attest to that. I was on ground yesterday, just, traversing from Ngong Road, Langata, all the way to Kibra and most parts of CBD at the KICC, and literally there was just barricades by the police. And on page 6, Ruto says we will not condone impunity. So President says that those who are aggrieved should use constitutional means to address their concerns. You can take a look at that story on page 6. DP Gachagua tells Azimio leaders to call off the demonstration since they are hurting the community. And Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua mentioned about 2 million, 2 million Kenyan shillings, was 2 billion, I beg your pardon, 2 billion Kenyan shillings in Nairobi City County alone was lost. And not only the economy was affected, but then even, the education sector and other major things that really happen in the country. In page 8 again, and in page 9, it is still matters the Azimio protests. Chaos in Nairobi, Kisumu in day of tear gas and beatings. That is still on Daily Nation. We'll be taking a look at the newspaper review with the guests when they arrive more extensively. Right now, let me brush through some of these particular papers. Let's get into the Standard for you this Tuesday morning. On the bold, reverses Raila, no retreat. Opposition leaders say there is no retreat or surrender, and that they will press on with the demonstrations against a cost of living every Monday until the government acts, even as leaders condemned police for arbitrary arrests and brutality that saw protesters injured. This story is extensive from the first page all the way to page 12. And you have there on the whole pictorials where Azimio leader Raila Odinga was leading protests in Mathare, that is in Nairobi yesterday. And then on the insert there on the Standard, where protesters barricaded the Migori-Kisii highway. You can see the tires and other paraphernalia being burned and whole black smoke right there. Page 2 and page 3, again, pictorials of just what happened. And quite notable there on page 3, Kilifi Senator Stuart Madzayo being arrested outside KICC Nairobi yesterday. And I beg your pardon, some legislators were arrested at KICC, that is Kilifi Senator Stuart Madzayo and Gunja Member of Parliament and also Minority Leader in the National Assembly, Opiyo Wandayi, were also arrested. And the Kilifi Kilifi South Member of Parliament and also Amina Nyazi, and they were released yesterday out in the Kiambu police station, each with 50,000 Kenyan shillings cash bail, and they're expected to present themselves before the Kahawa Law Courts on Thursday. But then, flanked yesterday by their lawyer, that is Dunstan Omari. So Dunstan Omari says that he'll be, petitioning the legality, basically, of the arrests of these particular legislators. And the legislators were saying that, these particular arrests were illegal and that the government was using the police to settle political scores. So we'll be getting into that with the guest this particular morning. So you can take a look at that, the whole pictorials of what actually happened. On atop there says, running battles as protests rock not only Kenya, but also Nigeria, Tunisia, and South Africa. So it was a whole Africa surprising. Day of drama as Raila tear-gassed by police, barred from city centre. That is on page 4. Take a look at that, and also below there says, President William Ruto says that he will not condone any impunity by, and that everyone must obey the laws of the land. On page 6 gives you some whole timelines from 8 a.m. all the way to around 3:35 p.m. So Monday in a nutshell in the timelines. So from 8 a.m., early morning in Nairobi, an easy calm in the streets, uniform and civilian police on foot patrol more visible on Kaunda Street all the way to around 3:35 p.m. Kibra residents clear roads after the morning unrest. You can take a look at that on page 6 and 7. Let me quickly brush through the Standard. Again, the whole Azimio demonstrations quite affected the education, and parents keep children at home. Fear Azimio demo. That is on page 8. So you have a pictorial there. A student and a father carrying a child run to safety when supporters of Azimio leader Raila Odinga were tear-gassed by police during anti-government protests in Nairobi yesterday. And even in Kibra, you did see a number of children being escorted, some being escorted by the police, just to actually pass through most of these places that were quite uneasy, and most of these places where the demonstrators were pelting the police with stones. So quite really affected the education and the normal programming in schools, and some schools really had to close early, just to break early during the day so that the children can actually go home. And page 8 did mention this earlier. Gachagua protests cost economy 2 billion Kenyan shillings. And on page 10, you can take a look at what actually happened in not only Kenya, but also in Nigeria, Tunisia, and South Africa. Let me take a look at what is happening in the People Daily. Remember, we'll be taking a keener look on these particular dailies later on, before we get to know what is trending in this particular hour and the past 24 hours. So the front page of the People Daily says, Raila on board, day of high drama. Azimio leader takes city by storm, promises to hold weekly protests until government bows to his demands as President William Ruto plays hardball. Extensive from page 1 all the way to page 12. There is a quote there by President William Ruto says, I will ensure as President that this country is governed by the rule of law and nothing extra legal. Extra constitutional and nothing outside the Constitution is going to be part of us. Again, still whole pictorials of what happened. On page 3, real quick, what Azimio chief says: open IBC servers, Azimio chief demands. We'll be taking a look at that with the guests. The whole future of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, even as the independent body right now is trying to form and reconstitute and have new members just to prepare for the 2027 elections and even other by-elections that may come amid before 2027. So open IBC servers, Azimio chief demands, and this is just one of the many demands, or rather the few demands that the Azimio chief does want President William Ruto to actually do. A day of fire, smoke and tears as police battle protesters in cities. You can take a look at the pictorials there of police throwing canisters and residents of Nairobi fleeing the tear gas, and police on the red berets. Their security beefed up along the procession way. Others, the police officers on horses, and patrolling security officers, basically patrolling the streets of Nairobi atop backs of horses. And again, there on page 5, I believe this is in Kisumu. For fighters in Kisumu put out fire at UDA offices in Milimani Estate after protesters attacked the premises. 2 cars were burnt down during the riots, and we'll be giving you more updates today on what is the whole aftermath of in Nairobi and other parts of Nyanza, and also some bits of central, like Rift Valley, like Nakuru. In page, this is page 6. Azimio leaders demand the release of arrested colleagues, but then they were actually released. So we'll be taking a look at how the wheels of justice will be playing along on Thursday and even today. But then stick around for more kina look into these particular briefs on the dailies. But then Azimio coalition leader Raila Odinga has declared weekly protests on Monday until President William Ruto's administration addresses the opposition concerns. Odinga's tough call to Ruto came as police blocked his planned march from the Central Business District to State House. Now, after police barricaded all the key roads while dispersing his supporters on a day of chaos in the capital that brought the city to a standstill. A senior political affairs reporter, Paul Kabau, has the day's coverage.
Nairobi Business District became a no-go zone as police engaged Azimio supporters in running battles to disperse the opposition's grand march to State House. Trouble started in the morning when police arrested Azimio members of parliament at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, where the march to State House was to start. On the other side of town, on Kenyatta Avenue, Azimio supporters barricaded roads using stones. Police who were on constant patrol in the city on vehicles and horsebacks lobbed tear gas canisters to disperse the protesting youth. As the action was going on, Azimio leader Raila Odinga and other coalition leaders were holed up at the Serena Hotel ready to march the KICC. But police had barricaded Professional Way, turning the road into a chaotic scene of water and tear gas as Odinga and his motorcade hurriedly left the venue and used Haile Selassie Avenue to join Juja Road and eventually Eastlands. Here, a tough-speaking Odinga, despite confrontations with police on his whistle stopovers in Kamukunji, Eastleigh and Mathare, declared weekly protest until the government addresses Azimio's demands.
Nchi hii ni yetu, ni kweli si kweli?
Tena Jumatatu ijayo tuko maandamano. Sawa.
The opening of IEBC servers due to the contested 2022 poll, the reconstitution of IEBC, and the high cost of living remain Azimio's top concerns, which President Ruto must address. In what has been a chaotic tear gas Monday full of chaos, this is what the city looks like: a ghost town and a city at standstill. Apol Kamau, TV47 in Nairobi.
And the Azimio Umoja One Kenya leaders, who include Ugunja MP Opiyo Wandayi and Kilifi Senator Stuart Madzayo, arrested earlier yesterday outside KICC, have been released from the Kiambu police station on a 50,000 Kenya shillings cash bail. This even as the Azimio countrywide demonstrations were marred by violence as protesters engaged the police in running battles.
This was the situation in Kibra, Nairobi County. Demonstrators engaging in running battles with the police and later pelting the police with stones. The clash, which was witnessed during the better part of the day, saw a number of protesters arrested, with a few reported injuries from both the police and the protesters.
And if they are there, let us treat us as human. Kenya is for us all. So, and we have our freedom of movement, of speech, and of doing these things that they are denying us. Now, here is Kibera. Why are they denying people of Kibera to come to CBD? If they deny Kibera, what about Mathare? What about other parts of the world?
Meanwhile, most roads in Nairobi were deserted, with a small group of protesters clashing with the police along Gong Road, a situation that forced motorists to use alternative roads. Azimio's plan to address journalists and supporters outside a Nairobi hotel, however, failed to see the light of day, as tear gas canisters were directed towards the procession. This even as 6 Azimio leaders, including Minority Leader in the Senate, Stuart Madzayo, and his National Assembly counterpart, Opiyo Wandayi, have been released from the Kiambu police station with a 50,000 cash bail. The legislators were flanked by their lawyer Dunstan Omari, who has noted that the arrests were conducted illegally.
I want us to go to court in Kahawa, that court which was built for hardcore, for terrorists, you know. The Kahawa court was built for terrorists because it's in the committee. That's why they're taking us on Thursday to go and take police.
In the most disgraceful manner I've ever seen a Kenyan being handled like that. I've been in this country for some time, and I know how decent police officers are. But the ones I've seen today, it was shocking.
Na tuko na jukumu kusimama kuongea ule uwazi. Watatuweka jela, watatupigia tear gas, hatutasimama. Hii haitaturudisha nyuma mpaka haki itendeke kwa mwananchi ambaye kwamba ni mnyonge. Hilo lazima lieleweke.
Tomorrow I'll be moving to the Constitutional Court. One, to challenge the provision of declaring a meeting an illegal assembly.
The Azimio leaders had been arrested outside KICC as they joined Kenyans in the anti-William Ruto protests. Stanley Nyeringita, TV47.
And Azimio's D-Day for the mass actions has elicited mixed reactions from leaders drawn from the Kenya Kwanza coalition as they term it destructive. The protests have left many parts of the country at a standstill as most of the businesses were closed, as Flora Lemuki tells us.
As business operations remained paralyzed in Nairobi and some other major towns in the country for the better part of the day following protests from the opposition, a section of leaders and residents allied to the Kenya Kwanza government has condemned the demonstrations, terming them unnecessary.
Lakini hatutaki maandamano ya kazi yenye hatuifai. Kazi zetu tumefunga, watu wameko kwa manyumba, si ati wamemuogopa, lakini tunaongopa kazi zetu kuharibiwa. Mmoja ashikwe, watu wake aende atuonyeshe kazi yake mahali iko.
Meanwhile, Kilifi leaders and residents have also castigated the ongoing national protest by Azimio leaders, with Kilifi North MP Owen Baya saying that the protest was affecting the country and leaders must desist from the same. The lawmaker said that if there are grievances, then they should be done through the National Assembly.
So, maandamano will not help this country. What will help this country is hardworking Kenyans
to support the investments that people are making so that we can grow the economy.
So with this economy, lazima tutoe sauti zetu, na tumeona Azimio kupitia maandamano wanatoa ile sauti, na hakika kwamba kupitia sauti zile labda wabunge wanapoketi pale wataweza kurudisha hizo bei chini.
Elsewhere, Uasin Gishu leaders led by Senator Jackson Mandago have conveyed a message to Raila Odinga to stop the protest because in the long run he won't get a handshake agreement with the president.
Lakini pia wasisome katiba sehemu ama vipengee moja na kuacha sehemu ambazo sinahitaji wawajibike katika hiyo maandamano.
Tutasalimiana kwa wale wajumbe wanataka kufanya kazi na serikali, au watasalimiana State House na tutafanya kazi ili kuhakikisha kuna maendeleo katika Kenya mzima. Lakini handshake yake ya mbuta hii haiwezi fanyika Kenya hii. So the sooner he gets to his aid, the better.
Hayo mambo yote anasema leo alikuwa pale, mbona hakutekeleza? Mbona bei ya chakula na kila kitu ilienda juu kwa watamu wao?
Flora Limuki, TV 47.
Now, political protests in Kenya are not a new phenomenon. Many times, when a group of people in the country feel aggrieved or politically oppressed, they head to the streets to express their dissatisfaction. Azimio leader Raila Odinga is one of the leaders who has a number of times led his followers to the streets to push the government to act on a raft of issues. However, he feels most of the issues presented are never dealt with as expected. Here's our reporter Sharon Baranga with more.
March 20th, 2023, businesses came to a standstill in many towns in the country as police officers engaged protesters who came out in their numbers following Azimio leader Raila Odinga's announcement that on this day there will be a public holiday as Kenyans were urged to participate in the demonstrations. Like any other political protest that takes place in the country, this one too had issues that the opposition is pushing the government to resolve. The high cost of living and electoral malpractice are some of the issues the opposition pointed out as what they want the government to act upon. Whether the Azimio fraternity will achieve expected responses from the government or not is a matter of a wait and see. In 2018, a year after the country was recovering from the disputed 2017 general election, the country was yet again marred with protests after a dispute in the election results. But on 9th March 2018, a political truce was reached between former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and former President Uhuru Kenyatta, resulting to a handshake, a move that quelled political temperatures in the country. And the cycle of politically instigated demonstrations in the country can be traced to a period in time when the country is just from a general election. For instance, demonstrations were witnessed after the 2013 general election results were announced. In 2007, hell broke loose as a number of people died following protests that erupted after a disputed presidential election results. And each time there is an organized protest in the country, there is almost nothing to write home about when it comes to results. Sharon Baranga, TV 47.
Now, the scheduled demonstrations by opposition leader Raila Odinga and his supporters have disrupted business operations, which has made Kenya lose 2 billion Kenyan shillings. According to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, he has called on Raila Odinga to call off the demonstrations. And as Norbert Odur tells us, many small businesses also felt the hit.
The always crowded Nairobi Central Business District seemed abnormally quiet as of 7 a.m. today, with most establishments and businesses around major streets remaining closed for the better part of the day. This even as traders took precautions following the planned Azimio One Kenya mass action. As police engaged protesters and lobbed tear gas along the streets of the Nairobi Central Business District, it came to a standstill.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua broke his silence and asked Azimio leader Raila Odinga to call off the mass action, claiming Kenya had lost up to 2 billion shillings as the chaos from the Azimio supporters was not good for the economy.
As a result, this morning, because of lack of business in the CBD, the country has lost almost 2 billion shillings in terms of business. And this is money that should have been circulating in the economy. We want to urge these people to consider this afternoon to call off the chaos, the mayhem, the intimidation.
However, the Deputy President said he was happy that many Kenyans ignored the illegal declaration of a holiday by Raila Odinga and went to work as normal, adding that the chaos today will roll back the gains the country has made in terms of economic recovery.
So we urge the people of Kenya to ignore being incited into violence and destruction of property, because it's not good for the economy, it's not good for the country. And we want to thank those who are courageous enough to ignore threats and intimidation and to go about their businesses in an orderly manner.
Other counties such as Bungoma, West Pokot and Mombasa remained generally peaceful for the better part of the Monday morning as the residents worked freely amidst the ongoing demonstration countrywide. Residents in West Pokot distanced themselves from the anti-government demonstration, saying they do not have time for the demonstration as it would contribute to the skyrocketing of the cost of living.
Nimesema hakuna kinaitwa maandamano hapa. Sisi tutakaa kama wenyeji hapa na amani yetu na tufanye biashara yetu katika kaunti ya West Pokot.
Kwa majina naitwa Yvonne, tunauzia hapo Jakaranda. Mimi tumeamka asubuhi, tumekuja kufanya kazi yetu na tuko tunafanya kazi yetu kama kawaida.
The situation was the same in Bungoma County, even as they were demonstrating in silence and not on the roads, with businesses going on normal as it would on a Monday. Some expressed their mixed reaction towards the tough economic struggles.
Kitu ya kwanza si kuandaa kuongelea. Sisi hapa Western, Bungoma hapa, sisi ni watu ya ugali. Na lazima vyakula zirudi chini. Unga imepanda. Kitu ya pili, mafuta imepanda, na mafuta ikipanda inapandisha kila kitu.
Bei ya unga imepanda. Sasa hivi unapata bei ya sufuria iko juu, iko chini kuliko bei ya unga. Tukiangalia saa hizi uchumi iko juu. Mafuta, petroli ilikuwa 95, sasa hivi tunapata mpaka 177. Hata 200, 180. Budget imekuwa ya juu sana, uchumi imekuwa ni ya hali ya shida sana.
Norbert Oduor, TV 47.
Now, meanwhile, following the protests that took place in certain parts of the country, some counties in the country did not experience any demonstrations. According to those we managed to talk to, they shunned the protests to avoid disruptions. This story was produced by Ronnie Ruken.
Residents from some counties like Bungoma, Machakos, Vihiga, Meru, Embu and Kisii counties stayed away from Azimio's Monday's protests.
Hawa watu wote wanapata ajira kutoka kwa serikali. Na ikiwa unapata ajira, unapata mshahara kutoka kwa hiyo serikali, na wewe mwenyewe ndio unafanya maandamano, inamaanisha nini? Inaashiria kitu kama gani katika maisha?
Wakae opposition, wagojee serikali ifanye kazi. Nataka kusema ya kwamba sisi tunalaani hiyo migomba yao because wana waste time ya Wakenya wengi. Maana Wakenya wanataka kufocus na life, wanataka kuendelea na kazi, wataki migomo.
Serikali ifanye kazi. Lakini tumeona wakati mwingi baba anasemanga anatutetea. Ikifika wakati anachukuliwa na serikali akienda huko wananyamaza. Inakuwa sisi tunaendelea kufinyiriwa.
Wakati Raila walikuwa pamoja na Uhuru waliharibu uchumi. Sasa sisi lazima tupe rais wetu muda kwanza, tuone tusubiri hata angalau kama miaka 3 miaka 2 tuone vyenye itaendelea. Kwa hivyo sasa sisi hatuna ubaya na rais wetu. Hiyo ndio sababu ile kubwa.
It is a demonstration that had been called by Azimio One Kenya party leader Raila Odinga to force President William Ruto's government to lower the cost of living, the opening of the IEBC servers and drop recruitment of IEBC commissioners.
Hii maandamano ya Raila hakuna mali naguza mwananchi wa kawaida. Ni anajitafutia kazi na anataka kurudishwa ile gharama alipitia wakati wa campaign za 2022. Kwa hivyo mimi hakuna mali nitaona ati kitu itateremka hata kidogo. Hata wakisalimiana hakuna kitu itateremka. Kama nataka handshake, hata hiyo handshake ikifaulu hakuna kitu itateremka. Maisha itakuwa ile ile.
According to some of the residents that we talked to and who shunned the protests, the politicians are fighting for their personal interests.
In my position as the president is that we embrace the cohesion, we embrace that peace, we embrace that harmony, because this country doesn't belong to an individual. This country is for all citizens.
According to some, all they want is development and not protests.
Hata tukiandamana na at the end of the day turudi kwa nyumba hatuna kitu ya kukula, hakuna maana. Sasa sisi tunaomba tu Ruto anyamaze, mwenyewe akae chini na nini yake, waongee, watushukishie vitu chini. Hatutaki kelele, tunataka tu umoja.
Would there be a reconciliation between Azimio leader Raila Odinga and President William Ruto? That is a matter of wait and see.
5 African countries made global headlines Monday following simultaneous mass protests against the governments. Demonstrators in Kenya, South Africa, Tunisia, Nigeria, and Senegal brought normal operations to a standstill, protesting against the various government regimes. Zainab Mohammed with more.
In Kenya, Azimio One Kenya Alliance leader Raila Odinga led protesters in a mass protest around the city, demonstrating the high cost of living, among other issues. The police and the protesters engaged in running battles, leading to the arrest of some of the protesters and leaders. In South Africa, the country's third largest party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, called for a national shutdown, bringing normal operations to a halt. The protesters, led by EFF leader Julius Malema, demonstrated the ongoing power crisis and demanded the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Nigeria's People Democratic Party leader Atiku Abubakar led protesters to Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission offices, protesting against the country's election results announced last week. In Tunisia, protesters marched on the street to pressure the government over alleged authoritarian rule by President Kais Saied. Thousands of opposition supporters flooded the country's capital city, Tunis, bringing normal operations to a standstill. And finally, in Senegal, supporters of Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko protested in the country's capital city, Dakar, in support of the aspiring presidential candidate who is facing a libel case set to resume next week. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
There you have it. It's a whole African uprising, basically. Not only in Kenya and other parts of the African continent. Speaking one voice, basically, they want change, and we'll be getting to hear from the gentleman in the studio this morning. Which change is this, and how will it ever be achieved? Let me introduce the guests real quick. On my left side, Ahmed Kadar, political analyst. We meet again. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you doing this?
Thanks for having me after whatever happened yesterday, and I'm sure we're going to put it in perspective.
I hope you were safe yesterday.
I have been out of the city, in fact, where there was no chaos.
And Abdullahi Elas, policy analyst. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank
you for having me. Yeah, we well. I was in the CBD in the morning from as early as 6.
Okay.
The 6 p.m. of yesterday and the 6 a.m. of today are two different in terms of mobility of people. So, people's president amesema wacha watu read gas.
So the tear gas didn't affect you?
It did. And I think there's, to some extent, the police were reckless in throwing some of it. It was unwarranted.
Okay.
These things affect the health of people. If you read about it, there are people who are asthmatic, there are people who are elderly. So I think they needed some restraint, but it was better than what used to happen in the country. So, yeah.
And there's actually a particular article on one of the papers. I think Daily Nation and or the Standard, which actually talks about the whole or Standard, which talks about the whole effects of the tear gas.
The Business Daily yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. Kevin Osido.
No.
Good morning.
Morning to you. How are you doing?
Minko Salama.
Great. I was monitoring the happenings.
Okay.
I was just surprised at the degree of mis and disinformation around the photos that were doing rounds, including the videos.
Indeed.
Even some of them of countries that are not Kenya.
Yeah.
And videos that happened in 2013, 2017. Some of the photos that people had shared earlier on. And interestingly, in most of the WhatsApp groups where I belong and some of my friends that we were engaging in this together with, we were really surprised that people don't care to even check what they are watching or even forwarding to other people. And I think that really is an opportunity that people who do not care about proper information, including context, would really want to take advantage of. But I think generally the protest met its objective.
I was actually coming to that. Did the demonstrations really achieve? Because it's a whole copy and paste of 2018. After the general elections, which again led to the 9th March 2018 handshake between Raila Odinga and former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Right now, this is just the beginning, according to him. Now, every Monday, this is going to be the norm. But then, Mondays, 20th of March, 2023, meet. Did it actually meet its objective, according to you?
According to me, I think it met its objective because.
But then again, some would argue they were, focused on going to State House, but then they didn't actually go to State House. So again, did they meet the objective?
Of course, a march to State House is a mirage. It's a dream that I don't think, and from their strategy and advice that Azimio leaders were given, that was not going to happen. It was untenable. And you remember that just hours before that particular protest, the leadership actually shared new strategies and also mechanisms of whatever they wanted to achieve yesterday, which included how they were supposed to appear in white handkerchiefs and carrying soforias and cooking sticks. And that, of course, after the march, then they would assemble. And Mheshimiwa Raila actually said that in the event that they would be need to head to State House, then they would propose a smaller team that would go and meet with the president. State House is a protected area, and that is really the symbol of leadership, political leadership of the Republic of Kenya. And so anyone who wants to make attempts to just march, especially in huge, massive numbers, I think you will be able to, you will meet the wrath of the protectorate, which basically include the police. And if in very dire consequences or scenarios, then of course even the defense forces would be deployed, and that is why it is not the police that guard State House. It is the General Service Unit. Yes, and if you move much more further inside, then you meet the military. And so I'm sure that the leadership of Azimio was quite aware about this. Of course, when it gets to the political message that you want to share, then you make it look big. And part of making it big is to more or less sweep the crowd and say, we are going to march to State House. And the people that you are talking to are people that don't care. And they don't care because these are people who are hungry. Some of them are university students, so people who are very intelligent, who do not have school fees to go to school. And most of them probably are people who have not had meals, any meals in the last maybe even 4 to 14 days. And so you want to more or less whip them and just let them know that I have something hopeful for you. And part of that is to remove whoever has made it difficult for you to get what you want. But I think, generally speaking, part of what, lastly to this is Raila Odinga's mechanisms around demonstrations. Okay. That is how he gets whatever he wants. And so he is probably thinking that talking about March 2020, Monday matches would probably give him another handshake, which I don't foresee, because the president has been very categorical that he's not going to have any conversations around handshakes, and that any Kenyan who is interested in having dialogue around progress and moving Kenya forward is welcome to the round table.
And speaking of, what both leaders want, because, at the end of the day, Raila says Ruto must open the IBC servers, Chirera 4 must be reinstated, the cost of living has to come down, the government or to reinstate, subsidies, a thorough review of laws, not just, piecemeal reforms. On the other hand, President William Ruto says that Raila is the cause of problems the country is facing. Raila doesn't want to follow law or in selecting the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, commissioners. The opposition wants to cause anarchy. Raila wants to put the country on a chokehold, and the government will stop him. Let's go back in time. In 2018, it resulted to the handshake from what ODM leader Raila Odinga wanted at that time. But then now, what lessons should we pick from 2018? Because in 2018, again, we saw the whole Monday marches and the whole tear gas Monday. What lessons should we be picking from 2018?
Well, I think first of all, there is the right of Kenyans to picket. And then there is the political objective of putting pressure to the government. In 2018 March is when Raila lost Kenyans. As in, when 200 people died, he did a handshake. People were asking, why did you allow 200 people to die? Then you're doing handshake. He was comfortable because he got the infrastructure representative under the African Union. He was having chase cars. He was pretty much comfortable. It doesn't mean that life wasn't bad, but most of his supporters were also comfortable. As in, if Baba was okay, they felt maybe they were okay. Now we went through an election. There are things that have been settled by the Constitution, which is the issue of the server which led to IEBC mandate in conducting elections. That has been settled by the Supreme Court, so I don't think there is anything much that can be achieved on that end. He can lobby and fight and make sure that his representative in the panel, in the selection, are taking their part, and he's updated on what's going on political front. But the issue of life, cost of living, that's where now, when Uhuru and Raila were together, they brought some changes into the way we were doing business in the country, in the sense that they give us some subsidies of saying that the government will pay extra money. I mean, from what I read about subsidies, that every excess money was being paid by the government of Kenya. So to me, I was comfortable, because in a country that 30% is said to be stolen, and Mutunga will call it the banditry economy, I wouldn't mind if the government is paying extra shillings to make sure that I fill my car with 9,000 instead of 17,000. After all, they're looting it to a certain extent. So if they're bringing it back, and then they are the ones either getting it or paying it to the people providing. So that was that. Yesterday, what happened yesterday is the baby bath or the bath of the Constitution. I mean, people are allowed to picket. Remember, if this happened during Kenyatta time or Moi time, people will be shot with live bullets. So yesterday's demonstrations, they were very organized. Organized in the sense that they didn't do it in one place. They did it in several places in the city. And that was the reason to overwhelm the police, or even throw the security apparatus off balance. The issue of saying that they wanted to go to State House, did they really want to go to State House, or they just wanted to irritate the state so that the power of the state surrounds? I mean, it's not only the military and GSU, there's also the Reke squad. So the state's function, primary function, is to protect the country, both from its own people and from external aggression. But now, Raila, did he even sleep at Serena, or he slept in his house? So there are a lot of things that strategically Azimio group succeeded in, making sure first, if the police could have restrained themselves a little bit more than what they did, the people who were protesting around Serena, you could see, they were not carrying machetes, they were not carrying rungus, they had no stones. Yet the government was throwing, the police were throwing tear gas, they were throwing the hot water with
But then if you walk along the roads around, I think major streets along Nairobi CBD, you'll find stones. It's not the police who had those stones?
No. The stones are always there. It doesn't mean that they are the ones. There is a lot of construction in the country. Okay, the pavements are being constructed. So they're all over. I'm saying the guys who are in front of, we judge what we see. We are not going to look at what we were told. I was at Spa Hot 96 yesterday in the morning. From 8 to 10 I was at NTV. From 1:30 to 4 I was at K24. So I was watching most of the things that were happening keenly. Believe you me, Azimio was very organized yesterday in terms of restraining. You will not miss incidences of where people will steal a mobile, take a pass, do this, that. I mean, they always, even the people who are categorized as criminals are in this group now because there's an opportunity to steal. But by and large, I think there was a death, a university student that was reported in Maseno University. There was one person who was shot in Kibra. The police were not carrying most of the things, live bullets. They were carrying tear gas. It was a good sign, but still, if they only barricaded some places and let them just, because why do you tear gas when Raila is speaking? I mean, they're not looting or anything. In Isli, I was watching what was happening. So there will always be incidents, but you look at the bigger picture. Our constitution has allowed people to do what we are doing.
Okay.
Now that we are here, it also shows that Raila has never lost touch. He has taken advantage of now the unga and the petrol and everything that has gone up. The onus is on the Kenya Kwanza government.
Kadar, he says and he talks about unorganized demonstrations. Azimio leader Raila Odinga came forth and said that we'll hold peaceful demonstrations. But then what happened yesterday? And you can take a look at the dailies that you have there on the Daily Nation. And, the pictorials from the first page all the way to the 12th page in most of the dailies, Daily Nation, Standard, People Daily. Are we looking at peaceful demonstrations here?
No,
because, this attire is burnt. This is stones on the road. Along Gong Road, most of the roads and most motorists had to use other roads because most of these roads were blocked. Was this organized per se? Did Azimio La Umoja live up to its promises of a peaceful demonstration?
I don't think so, because there was nothing organized about yesterday's demos. If I've also been following, what was happening all over the country, and to be honest, there was chaos all over. You can even see the headline of today's Daily Nation, The Return of Chaos. So to say that yesterday's demos were organized, I think is simply taking our viewers for a ride, because there was nothing organized about yesterday's demos. Secondly, if you look at these demos, during the campaigns, Azimio leaders pledged to the country that if they lose this election, they will not come back to their supporters and tell them that our election was stolen and all that kind of stories. But now 6 months down the line, they're talking of opening the servers, things that Ruto has nothing to do with, things that have been concluded in terms of legality by the Supreme Court, in terms of the institutions that are mandated to do elections. IEBC did the elections.
But at the end of the day, as Kenyans, it's their right to ask.
Yeah, but
questions.
See, when you say it's my right to ask, for example, it is my right to say anything I want to say. But at the same time, can I say everything that I have to say on TV, for example? I can't, because it depends, what I have to say. So saying that it's my right, your right ends where mine begins.
True.
Yes. So now, when you come out and say open the servers, the question is, who is supposed to open the servers? What is the role of the government of the day in opening servers? Let's be honest about this. Where does Kenya Kwanza government comes in opening servers? It is the courts are supposed to give that kind of directive, right or wrong. And I think they have concluded that matter when this matter came to the Supreme Court. There were a lot of during those period of the Supreme Court when these election petitions were going on. Those are matters that were concluded. Secondly, let's come back to yesterday's demos. There were many demos yesterday across Africa. and it's only ours, if you look at that had something to do with elections. Julius Malema of South Africa organized his demos and announced about sometimes 3 months ago, early this year, that on the 20th of March, there will be a shutdown in South Africa.
Okay.
And if you watch what was happening in South Africa yesterday, all over, it was peaceful, organized. We have not seen scenes where police and demonstrators were either throwing stones at each other or you know, the kind of ugly scenes we have witnessed. Simply because the demonstrations in South Africa were genuine, based on issues that touch on everyone. But here we have a situation where folks who lost an election come back 6 months later so that they can be seen to be causing chaos so they can have their way in government.
Let me ask
for
you
how
this,
long? You know, for how long? If you look at the discussion all over the country, on social media, on national TVs, everyone is asking, for how long? You know, will election losers always force themselves in government?
Let me ask you this though: if there is transparency, according to the Kenya Kwanza allies, if there is transparency according to President William Ruto and his allies, why then should the IBC servers not be opened?
The question is, the issue of opening IBC servers was a matter during the court petition regarding the elections, right? We have crossed that. Yes, that thing was decided upon. The courts gave its verdict. A president was declared a winner, confirmed again by the courts, whether servers were open or not, through the same process. That matter has been concluded. Now,
do you think
a government?
Do you think the president should direct the courts to revive this matter?
You see, why should he? Because he will be doing.
He doesn't even have the powers.
Yeah, he doesn't even have the power. Because you know, also the media has a role to play in trying, you know, in giving the right information to the public. When you say the president to open the server, where does the president come in issues of election, you know, and opening the servers? Because these are matters that have something to do with the courts. When the election happened, a winner was declared, right? On the 15th of August 2022, His Excellency President William Ruto was declared the winner. Then the losers went to court. There was a supreme petition. They came with their whatever evidence they had that the election was stolen or you know, whatever they said. The Supreme Court described that as hot air and you know, wild goose chase, and declared a winner. Now, yeah, you see, those are not my words. Those were the words of the Supreme Court, and declared a winner. Now, when the winner has been declared 6 months later, and the president is forming his government day by day, you come and say, open the servers. And now you want your supporters to believe that servers will be open. You psych them that on things that doesn't exist. I think that will be, you know, taking your Azimio supporters for fools. Secondly, we're talking about the dialogue. Now, what dialogue? You know, every elections, when you go to an election, when you go to football match, I want to equate election to a football match, because Azimio leaders are fan of using football kind of things to describe things. Now, when you go to a football match, two teams play, and then in a Champions League final, let's go to the 2006 final of the Champions League, which is more likely of what happened in the August 2022. It was a hot game between Arsenal and Barcelona, if you remember that game. And Arsenal almost scored a goal, but they didn't win. The same way Azimio almost scored by saying we have the deep state, by saying, this time around it's our time to lose. If you have seen the kind of things that were going on social media, that some of the Azimio bigwigs were saying, even after the elections, it was theirs to lose. Now coming back to the streets and making. So the thing is, that match has been decided by 90-minute game. It ended. Imagine now Arsenal saying we want to have a dialogue with Barcelona so that we can discuss. Discuss what? You lost and the winner got the cup and went home and enjoying the cup. In this case, forming a government. Secondly, I want to come back to the issues of the protest. How genuine are the protests? This protest. how genuine. If today, for argument's sake, Raila sit down, for example,
okay,
is given that platform. For argument's sake, I don't see it happening, but for argument's sake.
Sit down with President William Ruto.
Yes, for argument's sake, yeah? Okay. And talk. Will there be a demo next Monday? Will there be a demo next Monday? That's the question. Because last time, there was such a kind of demos, we were told every Monday there will be demos, there was a handshake. And after the handshake, the opposition, calmed down, and they forgot about everything that they were claiming to be agitating, That's why sometimes February last year, if you look at the internet never forgets. If you Google the Star, there's a story where Azimio leader was saying, in fact, he was castigating President Ruto, then who was leading, the campaigns in his side and all that, and who was castigating the government of then government for high cost of living and these things. Azimio leader came out clearly and said, stop the noise. Cost of living is high everywhere, and the word that was used was wacheni kupweka. That was the word. While I was trying to read about these things, I came across such an article, such a story. So the question is, if let's say 6 months to the election, you are against. But then at that time, saying the cost of living is high, and now you are saying the cost of living is high 6 months after election, when the president is trying to set up his government, when the president is really working hard to make sure that the cost of living comes down. There's fertilizers around, there's ways to work around the cost of living. And then now you want to say,
if I come to alas, at that time, ODM leader Raila Odinga had pointed out that the high cost of living was due to the war in the whole Russia and Ukraine. But then the then Deputy President William Ruto, disputed,
but you see, the issue of Ukraine
disputed those particular claims. But then, alas,
no, the issue. No, I want to answer that. The issue of Ukraine. The question is, when did Ukraine Russia war start? It started last year, February, around there, I guess. It's almost a year now.
Okay.
And at that time, the impact it had, the global impact it had, was minimal. Yeah, it was really minimal. Now it's at peak. Even as it is, that there is the issue of there was this dialogue that was between global partners, where Ukraine being the global producer of wheat and many other grains, there was an agreement that was facilitated by the UN, and Turkey allowed that the Black Sea, where there'll be a safe passage for the ships that are carrying grains to the global world. And I think that has been, but at that time when we were talking about the issue of Ukraine and this impacting, it had a minimal impact on the globe. Secondly, coming back to the issue of the chaos yesterday, I want to conclude.
Let me.
Allow me to conclude this. The issue of the chaos yesterday. What happened in Sili? I have to mention this.
We'll get to that later. Before I come to you, Alas, he talks about the whole genuineness of this particular demos, and I'll have to ask this: when the Azimio leaders were planning this particular demonstrations, they have the interest of Kenyans at heart.
My response to that is yes and no. Now, to the extent that you're talking about cost of living, that really is a big concern to a majority of Kenyans, whether you are from affluent community or middle class or the poor or the very poor. Cost of living is very high, and in fact, I think that the onus really rests on the Kenya Kwanza government, because during the campaigns and even as they continue to speak post their promulgation, they continue to tell us that they look like they have a very clear way of how they want to respond to the questions that are affecting Kenyans, including issues around cost of living. And this is a narrative that I believe that they have carried it since the campaigns, and they more or less looked like they know and have the responses to what really ails Kenya and Kenyans. But 6 months down the line, it looks like it was quite a dream that probably they had zero answers to. And that is really what I think continues to oil the narrative around Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance, that the government said they are going to do this, they have not done it. despite the fact that the details are not very clear, for example, if I was to be asked to help Azimio, I would break down the Hustler Fund, you know, and talk about the number of people who own Safaricom. And the statistics are there. You can get them against the number of people who can actually get money from government in form of either Hustler Fund or even affirmative action funds. That data is available. But why is it so difficult to just break it down to people? In roundtables and in halls, it is happening where leaders sit there and they are told this is a number of people who have received and acquired Hustler Fund. But when you get to the rallies, the message actually changes. And I think it's basically due to the kind of crowds that Azimio La Umoja leaders see there. And so they think that it's an opportunity for them to whip people against the government. Whereas I think the message should actually be details around cost of living. So that, for example, you take us through a historical perspective of the cost of unga. At what point did unga get to 250, for example? How was it in 2002? Of course, by that point in time, cost of living and life was, of course, given the years, it's totally different. How about, for example, dollar exchange, foreign exchange? Kenya shilling against the US dollar is trading at 138 today.
Okay.
It would be easier for Azimio leaders to help Kenyans understand why that is happening as opposed to really fighting government. And I think it's a very is a positive narrative that responds to the cost of living and then provide solutions, which I don't see them providing. Issues around opening servers, I think that is a daydream because that matter has been dealt with. I think Kenyans understand that the elections ended. We had a Supreme Court petitioning process, and that it is not Kenya Kwanza government that is going to open the servers.
Do you think Kenyans who are lamenting about the cost of unga really care about opening the servers?
They do not care because there is no correlation between cost of unga and the servers. And that is why Azimio La Umoja leadership need to really concentrate on the message that really vibrates around the hearts, minds, and souls of Kenyans. And that is not a matter of opening servers. And I want us to watch this because given the turnout of the 2022 elections, I want us to keep checking how the turnout is going to be in 2027. It is going to be dire. It is going to be terrible. It is going to be very low compared to what we have seen today because Azimio La Umoja leaders make it look like there is no reason to vote, you know? And whereas the leadership that is in place and as per our democratic principles and the Constitution of Kenya, the way in which you install a leader is through a voting process. Now, once an election has taken place and you've been given the opportunity to go to court, of course, as Kevin Osido and as a Kenyan, I have serious issues with the manner in which the Supreme Court judgment was communicated to people because I thought that the judges more or less used language which was not Kenyan, in my view. They looked like they had serious scores to settle with the petitioners, and that is something which I think can be discussed separately. But in terms of growing the democratic principles and the rights of Kenyans to vote and participate in an election, and even to petition processes, I think the judges and the people who are at the heart of this particular process also need to be humane. They need to communicate in a language that makes it that would want to inspire somebody to actually go to court, which is why I think Azimio La Umoja leaders have something, and they actually are more or less scoring points. That is why probably we see people actually getting into their calls, coming out and joining the street demonstrations, because when a Supreme Court judge speaks the way in a manner in which you speak, and from facts of the points, you can actually tell that there were certain interferences with ballot papers, with the votes and etc. Make it easy for people to have a good, candid conversation, as opposed to looking like you already have taken sides. And processes beyond, further to that, we see the president actually having a luncheon for Supreme Court judges. We see a lot of conversations around increasing, judicial funds, and we see a lot of bromance or friendship that is very tight between the executive and the judiciary. Whereas, by Constitution of Kenya and by law, these arms of government are supposed to be independent, But when you continue to rub it around people, so Azimio La Umoja leaders will come out and tell people, didn't we tell you that these people actually paid? Or that the judiciary was bought by the executive, or that they actually are friends. Now, those do not really matter to Kenyans as it were. But when it is continuously rubbed and the kind of non-verbal cues and non-verbal communication between the executive and the judiciary more or less tend to add to it that actually Azimio leaders are right, then Kenyans will begin to ask, isn't there something wrong or isn't there something right between these two people? Now, when you take it 6 months down the line, it is a conversation that doesn't matter to Kenyans. But in the manner in which the government is responding actually makes it also matter, because they are also not helping to problem solve. They are also accusing and saying we are ready to have a dialogue, but not on elections. Now make it easy for Kenyans to have a conversation around elections, especially because the electoral cycle does not stop. The moment one ends, the next one starts. And that is why on the third point of this, Azimio la Umoja leaders are talking about IEBC commissioners. Now, if you asked me, that is also a matter that is done and dusted. It doesn't help Kenyans as we speak today. Why? Because there was a judicial service commission that was put in place to go further and assess the conduct of one commissioner. 3 others resigned. Other commissioners, 3 of them, their terms have ended. And the Constitution anticipates, including all the supportive laws of IEBC, the IEBC Act, the Electoral Code of Conduct, all these mechanisms anticipate that when terms of commissioners end, another term is supposed to start. Now, the president, in my view, has done something which I think is positive, even around the issues that Azimio is crying over, which include the addition of PSC. Now, the confusion around PSC is that we have a parliamentary service commission that is expected to have two members in that particular panel. Then we have the Public Service Commission, which even Azimio leaders are confusing, you know. Now, that is important to Kenyans to know, because there is a difference between Parliamentary Service Commission and the Public Service Commission, and both of them are expected to have membership in the panel, which is what Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance has problems with. Why? Because they think that the Public Service Commission is actually an executive arm of government, whereas it is actually not. Now, why is it so difficult for Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance leadership to have a conversation and a dialogue with the leadership of the PSC, so that they both agree on who they want as members to represent the political parties at the PSC? Remember, at the panel. Remember also that political parties are expected to have a representative, and the president in his Gazette notice has actually increased that number from 1 individual to 2 people, which I think is a positive thing. And it doesn't take away the 1997 IPPG process, where political parties actually had to sit down and agree on who their leader is. So I think beyond
these reforms, do you feel like at the end of the day, it will bring trust to Kenyans to the electoral system? Because many times it reaches a point where Kenyans don't really trust the electoral system.
I don't think that there's going to be bolstered trust because of the different kinds of narratives. Because the only drumming ball that we are hearing is Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance in rallies and in public protests. But beyond that, we're not concerned about the ongoing conversations, which is what I think Kenya Kwanza is doing. And they are saying, we know these people. Watapiga makelele, watachoka. They'll go demonstrate, they'll go back to their houses, whether to eat or not to eat now. And we'll continue to run the government, which is not a positive, progressive mechanism to lead a nation. It needs to be, let's sit together. Okay, what is your issue? Present your issue. Okay. Let's also present our issue. Then we agree. But remember also that the trust levels have already been dented, because trust levels in this mechanism is the IEBC. Do Kenyans actually have trust in the IEBC? I don't think so. Now, how do we boost that trust? Boosting that trust is in agreeing in terms of how do we strengthen the institution called the IEBC by bringing in commissioners that will also be trusted, and not people will be seen to be playing ball to either side of the political divide, like what we saw in the 7 commissioners of IEBC, where 3 were on this other side and the other 4 were on the other side, seen to be either Kenya Kwanza or Azimio la Umoja, which is where I think the trust deficit actually lies. And of course, lastly, is in the manner in which we do our elections. Is it possible that we can walk into a polling station, cast a vote, trust that that piece of paper that you make points and ticks on is actually going to be validated, ticked, and that the results are going to be posted in the manner in which they were done, without due interference, which is where I think most of the Kenyans are actually losing trust in the electoral process.
Unless Ozito speaks about matters dialogue, and a question has been raised on how both leaders of both factions should have dealt and handled all these particular issues, and so is there a better way that President William Ruto and Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua should have handled these particular demonstrations by Azimio? And on the other side, is there a better way that Azimio leader Raila Odinga and his allies should have handled these demonstrations?
Well, I think first of all there is the issue of being genuine, and there is the issue of being right. The rights always supersede what is genuine and what's not. Picketing is a right that cannot be taken away by anyone. But the Public Order Act says they must be orderly and organized, and then you also let the security apparatus know what you're doing. Now, Kenya has come through a very, kind of autocratic regimes that were very brutal. Those of us from northern Kenya don't find any love with Kenyatta government or even Moi government. Remember the Wagala massacre in Wajir, the Garissa Gubai in Garissa, that's 80, 82, 84. So we've come through a journey of political impunity for a very long time. Now came 1991, Article 2A was repealed, multi-party democracy was allowed to happen in the country. So what you're dealing with is the outcome of a process we started, what is called multi-party democracy, that people can go out, they can vent, they can organize demonstrations, and those in government have to provide security. That is the life we chose. Now Raila gave an ultimatum of about 14 days to the government. I thought if we had a very genuine leadership in the country that is thinking of employees, number one, and two, they will have thought of, I don't think speaking to Raila is anything so hard because there is no law that bans the head of state to speak to Raila. I'm sure even now there were calls they made behind the scenes that Kenyans don't know about. I'm sure there are people from both teams who are talking. What is the essence of dialogue? The essence of dialogue is to protect a country not to go into anarchy. Raila has categorically said he does not need a handshake. Whether that's true or false, we will wait and see. William Ruto told us that he's not going to accept. Whether that's true or not, we are going to see. But now, we have a country to feed. We have a population to employ. We have an economy to stabilize. We have a health system that is in its deathbed to revive. We have drought that just have left us. And so we have a lot of things to do as a country that is more important than the political antics of the daily activities than the political mechanics of government. So if, let's say in 1963 we were about 8.9 million. Today we are from 2019 up to now, estimates from Kenyan Bureau of Standards, others saying maybe 56 million. Maybe in 2030 we are going to be 67 million. That is population that is robustically growing very fast. So we have more mouths to feed. This is a country where 83% are in the informal sector. Okay, this is a country where the income for an average Kenyan is in a daily is about $1.9. This is a country where people work today, buy unga, go home, leave tomorrow morning, do the same. So what is going to help us is what you call authentic leadership in honest political process. If that is missed, we will come back 10 years from now or 5 years from now and discuss the same issues. Trust deficit has come from Kenyatta government. It has been there from Moi government. Other Kenyans did not trust the Kalenjins and the Kikuyus. But on the contrary, yesterday I saw how Azimio was conducting himself, and I was looking at the guys who were around Baba. They were specifically selected. They were high belt, either trained military or people who are very informed of security, work up around the Prime Minister.
But then at the end of the day, is Azimio Lomoja raising concerns that, or raising permanent solutions for 10 years to come? Because even as you say,
Solutions
in 2030, maybe we might be about 60 million.
66,
people.
67 million. Those things can come if the leadership are honest. Is Raila honest about everything he's doing? No. He is camouflaging whatever he's doing under the premises of cost of living. He's a politician. What is politics? Politics is the daily activity of what political parties, government, constitution, Supreme Court, whatever we do, is all end products of politics. So political processes are the one that determines prices in this Kenya. That's why we make low tax laws in the country. So daily activities is a political activity. So if President Ruto is not determined to talk to Raila, then the question is, he will have very difficult country to govern, because if they do it every Monday and we lost, let's say, we take the face value of what the DP told us. I don't think he was the
2
right
billion one month.
Yeah, I don't think he's the right person to tell us. That should have come from the treasury or economists like David D who are working. So the guys who are good with numbers, who know the parameters they look at when it's automatic that money has been lost. I mean, Lee wasn't opened yesterday. It contributes a third of the GDP.
Lee was opened until those guys ended up there.
Listen, you see, open in the sense that when you say it's opened and few are opened and it is not opened fully. I live in Lee. So in CBD, it wasn't opened. Because what was created is fear. Now, uncertainty, he's an accountant. Uncertainty is not good for money market. It's not. Because once a person has money in this country, he's not going to invest if he knows tomorrow there will be chaos. So what is important is this. President William Ruto is a sign of a symbol for this country. Today he lives in State House, courtesy of Kenyans giving him votes. But those Kenyans who gave him votes are lesser than those who did not give him or those who did not vote. Because 8 million did not vote, because there is a trust deficit in the political processes of this country from a very long time.
Okay.
So what needs to happen right now is the onus lies with the Raila is a political leader, is right. He was a former prime minister. He was a former minister, a former member of parliament. All those things you can't take away from him, yes.
Yeah.
But today we have a president for the republic of this country. His name is Dr. William Ruto. If he wants to make sure that we come back from this economical quagmire we are in, he needs to sit with the economists and listen to them. The last time I checked, he studied botany and zoology. So the people around, he might have been in government for a very long time. Most of the things we say is because we have studied them. We have researched on them. So there are people who are good with the numbers and the data who can help him with some things. Some of the things that he has done, was it good for the elites or it was good for us? Because some people told me that subsidies are not good for the country. Says who? I was paying 9,000. I am paying 15,000 today. So I don't care whether subsidy is good for the economy or not. That is for someone else to take care of that. If there is money being stolen, you seal those loopholes. If we had from 1963, if the Kenyatta government had a dream of feeding Kenyans first, they would have just created portion mills that belongs to the government.
Right.
NYS will have done a good work.
Okay.
When Uhuru Kenyatta came to power, most of the NMS vehicle were all serviced at NYS, and they did a very good work. But for us, everything we do, what's my cut? What's my percentage? How do you run a country like an enterprise? You can't do that. Okay. Yes, you need to plan, implement. He's an accountant. If you say you're going to buy a car, there's what you call physical. He has to see. There's a term in accounts that you have to show me the car first.
Mm-hmm.
If he's going to audit my farm and there are 3 cars, he has to see KBA or KCB and then from there he saw the car, the chase number, the year of. That's what to do. Now, if you have a country where the leaders are running the country as an enterprise to make profit, this is the mess we will be in.
Okay.
The country must be run where people are governed, policies are implemented slowly by government, because we have long-term and short-term. Remember, Lamu Port was initiated in 1974. But when have we seen the realization? Today, Lapset, these roads, some of them were planned 10, 15 years ago. So there is the short-term and the long-term. The short-term right now for President Ruto,
is...
How do we get fuel go down?
Okay.
How do we get ugali go down? Whatever magic he's going to do, he's the president. He asked for the job, we gave him the job.
Kadar, the 14 days ultimatum given by Azimio, do you think that the Kenya Kwanza literally sat down and tried to bulge even in the 14 days ultimatum?
Before the Monday protest?
Yeah, before the Monday protest.
Okay, well, I cannot be clearly saying yes or no because I am not privy to.
But then, okay, do you feel like they should have, even tried to, come out publicly and say we will try and do this and do this?
You see, the ultimatum given by Azimio that Kenya Kwanza government should do ABCD within 14 days is something I will literally describe myself again using the court's word, hot air, and I'll explain why. Let's go to the IEBC. One of the demand was the IEBC selection process, right? If you look at the IEBC selection process, there's a bill. The IEBC Amendment Bill 2022 was passed just a month before the election, Osido, and I'm sure my brother Alice will agree with me. And when it was passed, it was Azimio that was at the forefront in pushing for its passage. Sometimes when you pass laws for political expediency and not for posterity, you are going to be hurt. Because at the end of the day, what you think today is yours may not be yours tomorrow. And so you put yourself into problem by agreeing to things that may have major impact at a later date. So always think twice when you're doing some of these things. So that tomorrow, if I am not in that yard, if I'm not in that court of argument, will I be safe? And Azimio was told by the political players then, these laws you are passing today, that you are pushing down the throat of Kenyans and the larger political spectrum, it's not good for everyone. And today, because maybe you think you are in power simply because you are in a handshake arrangement, you think it's going to be good for you, but tomorrow anything can happen. And when that happens, you will definitely suffer. And that's exactly what's happening. Because the election, the bill was passed before the elections. So what President Ruto did simply is to refine the bill. I mean, not President Ruto, the Kenya Kwanza government, because the bill was sent back to Parliament for amendments.
Okay.
And one of the amendments, the key amendment is the Parliamentary Service Commission was supposed to have 4 representatives in the IEBC selection panel. So in the amendment, it was agreed that they should have 2, the Parliamentary Service Commission, then 1 person from the Parliamentary Service Commission. There's a difference between Parliamentary Service Commission and the Public Service Commission.
Yeah.
So 2 from Parliamentary Service Commission, 1 from the Public Service Commission, 1 from the Political Liaison Committee, and then 1 from the LSK, and then 2 from the interreligious organization. 1 man, 1 female. So they are totally 7.
Okay.
So this 7 is in such a way that when you elect a chairman, a number that cannot be divisible of 2 is always good to balance things. So that is the whole thing. So what Kenya Kwanza amendment that was signed into law by President William Ruto is good because it rectified the mistakes Azimio watched under the handshake government in passing laws that were not good for electoral justice. Yet they are the ones who always complain of electoral justice.
Okay.
Again, the other thing that we have talked about by my friends here, yesterday's Azimio protest, unlike even 2018 before the handshake, was a 2-county affair, Kisumu and Nairobi. No any other place did we witness, even not in Mombasa, where we used to think Azimio has I always used to believe Mombasa is an Azimio county. But after yesterday's protest, I have realized Mombasa have seen what President Ruto did for them in terms of returning, reviving the coastal city, in terms of businesses, taking back the port operation back to Mombasa. People are saying we are back to business. Why should we be demonstrating? It's not that I am against demonstration, no. It's not that I'm against the right of people to picket, no. But there's a time to picket and there's a time to do business. If things are working, why fix? Now the thing is, it was only 2
strongholds of...
I was in Kajiado yesterday.
Okay.
The entire part of the day, unlike my friends who are in the CBD, but I was following everything that was happening. Kajiado was peaceful. You will not, if you were in Kajiado yesterday, Kajiado was just an hour drive, less than an hour drive from Nairobi. And if you were in Kajiado yesterday, you will not imagine that there's anything else going, there's a chaos going or demos going even in Nairobi, okay. if you are not following the news. Now, 2 out of 47 counties, surely, you know, how can, even at other counties, we have seen maybe, so that's why I'm saying, apart from Nairobi, any other county that demonstrated was maybe, you know, Migori, some pockets of picketing here.
Nairobi is the capital city. There was also Kisumu, there was Migori, there was Nakuru.
Yes.
And,
Kitale.
And also Kitale.
No, Nakuru, we have seen TV. We saw the.
Don't cherry pick.
No, I'm not cherry picking. I'm just saying what is there. If you look at the where protests were happening, okay. It was majorly Nairobi and Kisumu. Unfortunately, even Kisumu, it became so chaotic
all that thought we're taking a short break.
That UDA officers were
taking a short break.
vandalized,
cars were banned.
So who's responsible for that?
We'll be right back after this short break.
It was Nairobi-based.
Yes.
It was a Nairobi-based demo.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, karibuni sana. This is Dr. Frank tonight. And of course, on to our first guest of the night. An amazing actress, an award-winning actress, one of the top influencers right now, a top brand ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, and a lady who I respect, and of course, I'm proud to call her my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, DJs listening, are you ready for something there?
Yes.
You ready, yeah?
Yes.
Give me something, yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Kate Kamau, aka Kate, actress. How much material
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I'm a lot.
Does it give like, is it like normal time to wear like 10 minutes?
Asha.
Ama like lazima uipangie.
Hii lazima shida ni kwenda kwa choo hiyo tu. Yeah.
When they come to think of it, madam new and madam of a jumpsuit, how do you guys go to the washroom? How do you guys deal with that?
That's
whole
why
thing?
we go in pairs to the bathroom.
No, men, you never find men going to the washroom in pairs. And where Richie? Richie Nyaje. That's your soldier. I think ladies are so privileged. You guys can even call each other boom, babe, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Imagine now I'm now calling Richie. Richie babe, Nyaje. Unakamjobosa ngapi na saxophone.
But we are okay with that.
Never.
Yeah.
Kate, welcome on the show. You are our first guest ever. Piga makofi. Tuko na interior design round hii.
Ini Wajakoya ama
check relax. Usiseme na nguvu we. Nakada wana watch, nakada.
Ni sponsors.
Let me ask, have you ever tried?
No, what is that?
Eh?
No.
Haujawahi? Under by mistake.
But now I know it because of Wajakoya.
Oh really? So hujaipita kwa campaign ya Wajakoya by mistake ukaisikia? Have you ever tried drugs at any point?
Which one?
You're a clean,
I'm a
good
role
girl.
model.
Role model. Sawa kwa Listen, do we have enough role models in the industry anymore? Or because I've seen these days people do their own.
Ask, who will pay for this in the long run?
And I agree with you that there has to be somebody to be held to account. And one of those people to be held to account is the government, particularly the security infrastructure. And by security infrastructure, I mean the software and the hardware. So hardware in the sense that, are we able to actually review our CCTV cameras? Are they even in place? Because if you look at past budgets, government has invested heavily, you know, hundreds of millions to billions, 66.4 billion on Anglo-leasing, for example, to be able to have some equipment that would be able to bolster our security. And one of those, one of that kind of infrastructure is the CCTV cameras. So in areas where we suspect or we saw people actually looting and interfering with, civilians or citizens who are just going around doing their business, and others breaking into people's property, like we saw in Nairobi, Kisumu, and the other places. Can we actually review those CCTV cameras and pick those people through biometrics or whatever mechanism that the security personnel have to identify them and hold them to accountable? So two people, one is the government, and two is the people who are actually interfering. Number three is the police. Are we able to have a mechanism, because I know that it actually exists through IPOA and others, where we actually hold police to accountable? If there were live bullets that were shot, who shot them? And from mechanisms within police service, you can identify who was given which bullet, what was the serial number, what was the code, and then who shot it, who released it, And then we have a mechanism where we actually hold the police to account and have them respond to questions that Kenyans are asking around why shoot people. Number 3 to that is, of course, if people are having peaceful demonstrations, why do you want to lobster tear gas? Of course, we know we saw in some places where citizens were attempting to throw stones at the police. We have seen that happening. The challenge that I think rests is that we have not been able to actually identify the individuals, both civilians and government personnel, so security officers, and actually hold them to account. Why do you bolster tear gas on innocent, peaceful protesting civilians? So I think that there are lots of avenues through which we can actually be able to help Kenyans answer to the difficult questions around, breaking into people's property. I was really disturbed that hotels in Kisumu were actually broken into, particularly Imperial Sarova. And of course, we saw the UDA office being burned down. Why? Why should those kind of things happen? So I think that post the protests or after the protests, there are lots of answers that people actually should be given, particularly by the people who were at the forefront of organizing both the demonstrations, the demonstrators mobilizing them, and also the government side, where, for example, you have the OCSs, the officers commanding different stations, the police divisions, and etc., responding to the difficult questions. I have organized demonstrations. I have mobilized people to demonstrate. There is a point at which you actually get where you tell people, anything that happens as Kevin Osido, I will not be responsible. So you already begin to also send fear to people and let them know that what we are doing is right, but we also have to be mindful of other people, because not everyone on the streets wants to demonstrate. I saw in some of the...
Which reminds me, sorry to cut you short, on Sunday,
yes.
Cabinet Secretary of Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, via statement, said that the Azimio leaders, will be responsible for all these particular protests. So do you feel like everything, that happened yesterday, they should be, should be put forward to answer to everything that happened?
Not everything, but of course there's a point at which they need to respond. For example, if you look at most of the people who are demonstrating and even organizing and mobilizing, a majority of them are elected leaders, both senators, members of Parliament, National Assembly, and even MCAs of Nairobi.
Governors.
Most of those, and even governors, like my governor from Siaya, was there, and Orengo was presenting his points there very, 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 very hot-heartedly. But the point is, who takes responsibility? So there is a point at which the Azimio leadership need to also be asked very difficult questions, particularly given the fact that they've already indicated that every Monday will be a Monday mass action day. So how do we therefore better the mistakes or the worst aspects of the demonstration that already happened, yesterday's demonstration? Of course, government also has to be held to accountable, and so Professor Kithure Kindiki needs to tell Kenyans which police officers actually fired live bullets and why were they shooting at innocent people who are just going around doing their business or even demonstrating, but of course wishing to want to interfere. Lastly, so that my colleagues can come in,
okay.
The wider question around loss of revenue, because when you shut down Nairobi, for example, it means that you are shutting down the capital, both in terms of the political space, in terms of the economic space, and the fact that business therefore cannot happen. So people cannot just buy and sell their goods and property. It means that the revenue losses are evident. Nairobi County is supposed to be telling us how much the county lost, in terms of yesterday's protests and the other areas that were affected. And then the national government, through Treasury, should also be bold enough to begin to break down the numbers. What were the after effects? How much did we lose? How many, the roads that were closed, how many vehicles failed to fuel there to get petrol? How many shops were not opened? And how many who actually did not report to work. So how many kids are not going to go to school today or yesterday because they cannot pay school fees, etc. So there is a lot of after protest questions that I believe that government should be genuine enough to actually sit and help Kenyans understand than saying it was Raila Amolo Odinga doing. I think this is much more bigger than Raila Amolo Odinga.
Even as even as you come in, I believe that also human rights activists will also be on the forefront to actually table down this is the number of injuries that we witnessed, this and the number of maybe deaths, if any, that were reported. Alas, as he mentions, next week on Monday and other Mondays, we don't know how many, but then according to Raila, Mondays this will be the trend. The whole
I think
demonstration.
Kenyans have chosen a constitution that contains Article 37. So there is no one to tell these guys not to protest. They can protest day in, day out, up to the next 5 years or 100 years. Now, what are we supposed to do? There is a government in place. He who comes with equity must come with clean hands. The government itself must tell us who killed the university student in Maseno. Unless we held those we pay to do work accountable, we are not just going to be asking accountability from the opposition, people who are not already in power. There are people with the state machinery. People, I think President William Ruto is the highest paid civil servant in this country, or state officer. So these are the guys, they need to be equally...
I think they are guys who earn more than the president in the civil service.
Well, let's say that any state officer right now who is earning more than the president, we need to get value for money.
Yes.
Okay? Now, if that is the country we want people who are accountable, we want people who are remorseful, we want people who are valuing, as a Muslim, we were told that the humans have been, honored. In Karamta, what was the ayah? That God has honored human beings.
Yes.
Okay.
So Bani Adam. So we are told that the most valuable asset we have in this country are human beings, not those technologies, not this, that. Everything we have has been created by human beings. So sacred life, lose of one life. When Kenya reaches the point in time that one life is so important that every Kenyan is and worried that we've lost a life, then that country will develop. President William Ruto asked for a job. I will repeat. Sometimes when you swallow a coconut, you should be thinking of the size of your anus. Because sometimes you might be swallowing things because everything he was accusing on his former boss, he's now dealing with it. Because these are things that have accumulated for 10 years. I'm not saying everything that is happening is his mistake, no, but he was part of it. So he knows where the cracks are. The debt, my brother will tell us the good numbers. By June, Kipto, the CS Finance told us it's going to be at 10 trillion. We have a deficit of 740 billion. We have a society that is hungry. When a society is hungry, it is angry. We are going to be angry not at Raila. We are going to be angry at President Ruto because he's the president. He's the one who is leading this state. He's the one who has employed the 22 cabinet secretaries. He's the one who has employed the 40 plus permanent secretaries. He's the one who told us we need another 50 cabinet secretaries. We equally need the petrol to go down, Mr. President.
Okay.
We equally need Ugali to go down, not just the guys you're employing. And if you study very well, this is just a 2027 political alignments of position and people in places, which is still part of politics. It's part of the process we're going through as a country.
Okay.
Our political dispensation is growing.
Okay.
So these are the mechanics of governance we are dealing with. But now, how do we make the best out of it? Okay? I want the Nairobi County government to make sure that Eastleigh is very clean. We are providing a third of the GDP of Nairobi. If that is so, then we need a very clean city. We need...
And speak of matters GDP, I want to get into the numbers briefly, Kadar. On page 10 of the Daily Nation, breaks down particular numbers here. 5.3 million Kenyan shillings, what Nairobi County collects in parking fees daily. And this is the revenue accounts for about 30% of the city's own source revenue. 56 billion shillings, amount by which investors' wealth rose at the Nairobi Securities Exchange yesterday, defying the day-long protests that took place. And 2 billion shillings, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua claimed the city's economy lost this much due to yesterday's protests. Let's not get into the politics of this, Kadar. Let's get into what, because personally, traversing Nairobi CBD, basically 80% of businesses were actually shut down in the better part of the day. Around 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., a few businesses popped up, and most of them were, hoteliers, so that actually people can actually eat. Yes. But then, there was still the whole fear around CBD.
How many people are coming to the hotels?
And but very few actually. But then later on, I'm not sure, how businesses actually, popped up. But then majorly businesses were shut down continuously. Let's say the next 4 Mondays, this might be the situation. But then as business, people, as the business community, definitely they have to change tact. How effective, as talking numbers, how effective should the business people change tact and see if Monday, yesterday this was the situation, the next Monday I have to change tact and actually get money. How best should this be done? Briefly,
before I come to that, there's no way we can talk about this without talking the political aspect of it. And I'm sorry to say that, because you requested that we should not talk about the political aspect, but these things are correlated. You cannot talk about...
Let's focus on the numbers now, Kadar. Yes. Let's focus on the numbers, for the business people who are listening right now.
Yes, for the numbers. You see, I'm not in a position to advise someone on how to protect themselves and their businesses against political demonstrations, honestly speaking. Yeah? All we can say is if you see demos and the government guarantees you first of all, it's a lie to talk about peaceful demonstrations in this part of the world. Let's be honest about that, because there's no day or have we seen demos or demonstration being peaceful.
Was it those that I believe were your demonstrations as peaceful?
They were not. If you ask me,
no. I mean, Osido said that he had demonstrations. I believe.
Maybe.
Which lens you're having, so it's okay.
Maybe he's
diverse of opinion.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe he's But the point I want to say is that businesses, already the economy is ailing. Let's go back to the numbers as you suggested. Already the economy is ailing.
Okay.
We are talking of high cost of living. Yet you bring demos to the streets, which automatically affect businesses, and these numbers will keep going up, in terms of losses, every other Monday. Next Monday is Ramadan. We, the Muslim community, we are starting the holy month of Ramadan within this week, towards the end of the week, either Thursday or Friday. I'm not sure which day it will be, depends on the sight of the moon, but it will be the end of this week. So next Monday, it will be, imagine going to Isli again, the busting, Isli, people minding their business, people fasting, people doing their, their spiritual reconfiguration and all that of things. And then it all of a sudden chaos starts, like yesterday, and tear gas everywhere. Of course, people will shut down the businesses. Of course, Nairobi County will continue losing revenues every Monday if this goes ahead, and there will be no parking. Restaurants in CBD their loss will be up. Every other aspect of the economy will be affected. Personally, like I said, I'm not against demonstrations. My brothers have stated it's there in the Constitution. It's everyone's right to picket. But the question it will be, right now, do we need to fix the economy? How do we fix the economy? How do we... And this economy that was messed by the handshake, to be honest. These are things we have always said. People have talked about it. People have analyzed. And the people who are now demonstrating, or people who want to be on the streets, are people who participated in the collapse of the economy within the handshake. And now they want to masquerade around as Masihi, or messiahs for economic liberation, which itself is the height of hypocrisy, if you ask me. The other thing about yesterday's demos, were a lot of fake news in yesterday's demos. We have seen people circulating videos graphic videos of people being, you know, butchered. Some of these videos were not even done within the country, as Kevin Osido has said earlier on.
Yeah.
And the people who are even circulating these videos are top leaders within the Azimio political formation. So the question is, are they really care about the kind of information they put? Now, when you talk about people being butchered in a video that was not even shot in this country or anywhere near, then you ignite flames. Automatically, the businesses get affected. People start fearing coming out, you know, to do the economic activities and all that. So for me, all I'm saying is that we, of course, we you know, right now, the most sensible within the political network, and I'm not talking about the presidency or this, I'm talking about the politicians. The person, you know, always there must be someone who sees the bigger picture. My governor, the governor of Nairobi County, makes a lot of sense when he talks about these issues of dialogue, and he said, you know, we need to sit down and talk, but not talk as in the way Azimio wants.
Okay.
But always there is room for discussion. We can have tea, talk about, you know, things that need to be done here and there. There must be someone who sees the bigger picture. But it doesn't have to be a handshake. It doesn't have to be, you know, people who lost the election coming to form a government.
Okay.
Because what is the point of having talks every other time when the losers and the winners had their match and the referee call off the game after 90 minutes and he has declared a winner? Why should we have a dialogue after the game? Is my thing. Again, the other thing is, you know, you asked me about the numbers.
Okay.
You see, the dollar keeps going up every other day, and if you look at the trend right now in the global perspective, banks are collapsing all over the, you know, especially in the US. There was the Silicon Valley Bank. There was yesterday I was seeing the USP acquired credit bank in the Swiss. The other day I was also seeing in the business news that Pakistan had shortage of dollars to buy Kenyan tea. So these things are connected. You know, we're in a time, we had a pandemic for 3 years. These are global. You know, the pandemic impact, by the way, is being felt right now. If you ask me, it's really hitting hard right now because 2020 is when the pandemic started. 2021, you know, we were firefighting the pandemic. 2022, right now the world has opened. Things have come back to normal, and we are witnessing the real impact of the pandemic 3 years down the line. And I want to believe that after this impact is witnessed, there's going to be a big boom. You know, there's always, what do you call, storm before the calm. This storm of dollar rates going up, this storm of banks collapsing, even it happened in 2008, there was economic depression.
Basically, you basically see, you know, a brighter future.
A brighter future. I read an article in The Economist about the 1918 flu, which was similar to the pandemic, and how the after that, how the 1920s became an economic boom after that. So there's always, even from an Islamic perspective where I sit, there's always bright future after hardship.
So let's get into some clear pictures here.
Yeah.
Raila Odinga has, you know, done this with other regimes, other presidents. Do you feel like you know, he will succeed, or rather President William Ruto will succeed where, you know, others failed?
As I said earlier on at the beginning of this show, I think this is Raila Odinga's way of doing things. In fact, I wouldn't shy to say that to a certain extent, I think that there could be certain underhand hands, what I would call the unseen fingers in all these processes. Because Raila Amolo Odinga, Mheshimiwa, has told us many times that he's about to retire, but we never see him retiring, even in 2022. Even in 2022, that's part of the confusion that rocked ODM around their presidential candidate. And we remember the former governor of Mombasa, Ali Hassan Joho, submitting his papers, former governor of Kakamega, Mheshimiwa Oparanya, submitting his papers, and then there was a lull. Then suddenly we were told Tinga is running. And then, of course, he ran for office amidst that confusion. And even at the end of this particular 2022 electoral cycle, to a certain extent, he said that the Supreme Court petition more or less finished it. And then suddenly the gentleman goes abroad, goes to South Africa, goes to Addis Ababa, and then he comes back and says, now I am back. And this game continues. So I think beyond Raila Amolo Odinga, we also need to move further and ask ourselves, could there be certain individuals that are more or less disenfranchised and feel left out or feel very much disturbed by the Kenya Kwanza government to an extent that they are looking for certain lights at the end of the tunnel, and that this light would probably end at Raila Amolo Odinga. Why? Because he's a gentleman who will declare a public holiday even where there is no public holiday, and it becomes a public holiday, and actually a holiday happens. So maybe there are people who are taking advantage of Raila Amolo Odinga and they are saying this is the man that you want to sit with. Second to that is to ask ourselves what really goes on in Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga's mind beyond his political life. I don't think anyone, and I mean in the post-2022 elections, has bothered to ask Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga, how do you live your life? When do you wake up? When do you eat? When do you jog? And all these things, beyond us seeing you playing politics. Because this is the algorithm of Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. It's the backbone. Politics is the backbone. And to an extent where there is no strong political opposition in Kenya, Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga will fill that void. And filling that void means putting pressure to any government. So whether others have failed or succeeded, and it doesn't have to be President William Ruto to decide whether he's going to be successful or not. He has worked with Baba before. They were trained by former President Moi. Oh, yeah. May God rest his soul in peace. They worked together in 2007, and Mheshimiwa Ruto actually went to the ICC. When he came back, he said, I went to the ICC because of this gentleman, and I am not going back again. 2013, he joined hands with Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, and they were against Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. 2017 happened the same way. So they know each other. And if you actually spoke to the president and asked him lessons that he has learned about Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga, one of those lessons is ability to mobilize. And so the president knows that Tinga will declare Monday mass Mondays, and those mass Mondays will happen. So the onus, in my view, actually rests on the president to be very bold enough, to be humble, to stop his deputy from tough talk as well, and both of them to agree and say, why don't we engage this gentleman? And pick his phone, because I know that they talk, and just say, Tinga, where are you? Can we go and have this nyama choma, and then we see how far we can push this country? Okay. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga will not pick his phone call and call the president, because he is enjoying, he is right inside his very well-oiled, progressive way of doing things. And the moment he sees people who are even willing to die for him, which I'm sure President William Ruto do not have those kind of people, even in his Kenya Kwanza political mobilization strategy. I don't think that they even have leaders like Edwin Sifuna, who will be at KICC and say, arrest us, we don't care. You take us to wherever you want to take us as long as we get what we want. Because these are people who believe in, maybe they see a future which is much more better that is supposed to be presented by Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. Okay. So the onus, in my view, and the greater responsibility actually rests on the president and the people who guard and advise him to just tell him, Your Excellency, you lose nothing by actually having a conversation, and he's many times said that he is willing to have a dialogue with any leader or any Kenyan who is willing to have conversations around moving the country forward. And I think Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga is actually having conversations to the level of cost of living, of having conversations that are moving this country forward. What I don't know is whether he has or his team has proper recommendations or strategies that can actually be sold to government. And by selling, I don't mean exchange of currency, I mean sharing. And of course, even if Kenya Kwanza wants currency, they can give to Tinga. But I mean sharing ideas that can actually move this country forward, because that is what we are looking forward to. For the stoppage of this particular protests, the onus rests on His Excellency, the President. That is where the greater responsibility rests.
And speaking of some nyama choma, and hopefully might probably see that Nyamachoma one day in the future. What tone onwards should President William Ruto take last? Because yesterday, President William Ruto said clearly, and I quote, "I will not tolerate impunity. Everyone must obey the laws of the land." Which kind of tone onwards should President William Ruto
Well, I think, first of all, we journalists are trained that you do not listen to what the people are saying. You listen to what they're not saying. Yesterday, if you looked at the body, the voice, the phrase of Ruto and Gachagua, they were not the same guy 24 hours before. The Gachagua was speaking at his classmates' event, and the Gachagua was speaking to us yesterday. They were not the same. The president who was speaking to us, look at the tone. That guy could barely speak. President Ruto was either tired or he was angry.
He was shocked.
He was either shocked. Now, let me tell you, there is something in politics that I've learned over the years, and I think President Ruto should read the prince. When you come to power, you don't reward your friends, you destroy them. This is not the church or the mosque. This is politics. If you want to govern, you destroy your friends.
But he's told us he's a churchman.
Yeah. Well,
why will you destroy your people?
No, listen. Wait, let me.
The context is different.
It will come to your time, my brother.
Okay,
Don't worry.
Okay.
Now, this is what's going to happen. The art of politics has been practiced by people before us. 90s, 17th century, 40s. So there's nothing new we learn now. People came to power. The people he thinks love him. Do you think Kidero went to State House that he loves Ruto? Kidero went because he wants to maybe either political checkmate for the Luo Nyanza, which he can't. There is something you cannot take away from Raila, daring. It's an ability you cannot buy with money. It's an inborn thing. You can't take that away from any man.
Okay.
So when you have that kind of guts, the ability to stand the heat, men who thrive in chaos, this kind of politics, this is Disneyland for Raila. What is happening today is not a big thing for him. Because he has survived, he was tortured. He told us that why he always, removes tears from his eyes because of the torture, he was denied lights and those things. A man who stands all those things, Ruto is a young man in politics, barely 30 years. This guy, Ruto has not been tortured, he has not been arrested.
Past 30s.
No, he is. Okay, he was given an opportunity because Moi was in power. Not Ruto was an angel then. No. He was given...
You see, you don't have to be tortured to succeed in politics.
No, listen.
Maybe
I am talking about the ability to stand adversity as a man.
You can only know that when it affects you.
No, listen. We all come from the north.
Yes.
Okay? We made it because we could stand. Him and I seated here because we've made it through a very hard life. His father was not someone, or my father. It's okay.
Hold that thought kindly. Then we take a short break. We'll be right back with what whatever you're saying, destroying the friends and all that. Then we get into the loyalty in Azimio leader. Okay, my director says you can finish up.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that
the loyalty in
politics has worked. The constitution we borrowed is an amalgamation, a breed of South Africa, United Kingdom, and the US.
Okay.
We did not written it ourselves. We modified it to suit. And I think the people who wrote this constitution were mainly non-Kikuyus and non-Kalenjins. Okay? People who suffered under Kenyatta, people who suffered under Moi, people who suffered under torturous life. Because if you look at the text, imagine there are no Luos in this country.
What do you mean?
The Luos are the ones who are always at the forefront of agitating for most of these things. Who are the guys fighting Kenyatta? Who are the fights? We were supporting them, yes. But you see, providing leadership is key in a political process. What Raila is doing, how many men can do that? Raila has suffered as a person. I agree that when I was seeking a member of parliament in Mandela North in 2013 or 2017, I was not seeking it because I love my people. It was about me, looking for a job and believing in my conviction that I can change things. It's the same with Raila.
I love your honesty, okay.
Yeah. So, Raila, you cannot, the President Ruto must know. Moi could not take away from him. Kenyatta Senior could not take away from him. You cannot. With this social media citizen where Kenyans are having mobiles, recording every ill of government, where information travel fast in seconds, where the majority of Kenyans are below 35, President Ruto has the opportunity to be the second best after Kenyatta. Now, if he continues like this, he will be number 3. After Kibaki, I mean. But now, if he continues like this, he might be number 3 and even be worse than Kenyatta.
And still matters honesty, Kadar. When you look at yesterday's demonstrations, we were expecting, when you talk about Azimio la Umoja leaders, there are quite plenty leaders there. And there are leaders we didn't see. Maybe for their own reasons, but then these are questions that Kenyans were asking yesterday. Where is so and so? Where is this particular leader? And even before that, about some few members of parliament from ODM say that they will not attend this particular demonstrations, and other leaders saying from the Azimio saying, well, we don't really want these particular demonstrastrations. What do you see into the loyalty into the Azimio la Umoja, basically that particular collision?
Well, that's something that has been noted yesterday by across the the internet by observers and supporters of the Azimio.
Yeah.
That some top hierarchy members of the Azimio leadership did not attend yesterday's demos. And this boils down to a situation where the leader, the Azimio party leader, that's Raila Odinga, has always been surrounded by people who want to climb the ladder using him, and once they reach that destination, they're no longer they're no longer there. So and that's why and Raila has always been a hostage of that forces, where you have to be seen. Do you think Sifuna will be elected Nairobi senator if he was not the ODM Secretary General? Let's be honest about that. Yeah. Do you think he'll be elected? He will not be elected.
Same as UDA?
Yeah, because he even lost. He couldn't even get, what do you mean by same as UDA?
If Ruto did not nominate you, you will not get any seat.
No, it's not that way. It's not that way. That's wrong.
You can't have your cake and eat it.
No, that's wrong. Because look at it. We're talking about Nairobi. Nairobi was an Azimio in the last election. Nairobi was an Azimio zone. And that's why I want to educate my brother.
See, Adar, what
because I'm a Nairobi voter. I'm a Nairobi voter. Listen,
to be a good debater, make your point. Avoid distractions.
Yes,
just make your point.
Yes, my point is that
your point is
my point is, which you have raised, is that the leaders of the ODMs, they did not come out for the Azimio rally because they don't believe in it. They also believe that they have arrived wherever they were going to their political destination before the 2022 general election. We have Azimio governors, Azimio MPs, and all that. Sifuna was running around just simply to save his job as being the ODM Secretary General. I don't think, as Kevin Osido said, that their people were ready to die because in fact, they were even harassing a police officer. If you watch some of the clips that were going around, an armed police officer who was even trying to avoid them, going inside the KICC, walking all the way to the other gate. Some of these things has to be said. We don't have to be seen to be sycophantic about what happened yesterday for us to be seen supporting a particular side or not. What happened yesterday, much as it is legal to protest and all that, wasn't the kind of demo we expected from Azimio.
Okay.
It was full of fake news in terms of online battalions. It was full of it was full of, as I said, fake news. Sometimes when you don't support some of these things, you are seen to be anti-Azimio or anti constitution or what.
Okay.
It's barely right to say that yesterday's Azimio rally failed, if you ask me. It failed because it was not organized. It only happened in 2 counties out of 48 counties.
Right, you've made your point. Let me get.
So do not gag me. Let me finish my statement. Let me finish my statement.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that, and this is your question I'm answering because you asked me, and I want to finish with that. You asked me why they don't appear. There was a caption that was going around in yesterday's about yesterday's
demonstrations
by Hassan Ali Joho. If you have seen, where it has been alleged, he said that why are we going to the streets when it was ours to lose the 2022 election? This is a coalition that nominated its cabinet 3 months to the election.
Okay.
This is a Azimio coalition that said this time around we have the system, but Kenyans told them the system is the people and not the deep state, so-called deep state. and they lost the election. Coming back 6 months later to tell us to open servers, make noise about this and that, is not being genuine about demos, and it's not fighting for Kenyans' rights or the cost of living, if you ask me.
I will donate my time to my brother, but I'll say this.
Yes.
First of all,
also give it to me.
Yeah. First of all, that did Raila say there's going to be a public holiday on Monday? Is it?
He did.
There was a public holiday yesterday.
An illegal one, though.
An illegal one.
Who said it's? Why was he not arrested? Look, this is a very free country with a new constitution.
Actually,
let me finish.
Just a pointer before
you give the point is this.
Let's just a pointer.
I'm saying this.
Let's just a pointer before you continue.
I am saying this. I am saying this.
Unless a brief pointer kindly. On Sunday also, Nairobi Police Commander Adamson Bungei said that the Azimio rally and also the Nairobi business community demonstrations that were to be held were illegal. So again,
let me tell you,
for you
why, the moment the
accountability of
the
that.
moment the Constitution says someone has the right to picket, what we are arguing about is the modality and the mechanics and the structure of it. It's not denying me the right. Okay? When the Constitution says someone, Abdullahi Alas, has the right to picket, we are talking about the how, the when, and the where.
And if you get it wrong, it's wrong.
Yes, let me finish. Now, wrong is relative. Depends on which lens you're wearing. And it's also said that when you look at everything with one color, you become a colorblind. Now, before I give my brother here to say something,
okay.
Raila has succeeded that he is the people's president. Okay? People who went to government offices, I spoke to some of them from my county. They said we went to the offices, but there was nobody to serve. Okay? People who had private cars could not come to the streets because insurances, he knows more than I do. Insurances, unless you have premium or certain amount extra, which most of us don't. I'm in a third party. My car is old, and then I am on 7,000 insurance. I'm not going to take it to the streets because it's going to cost me 18,000 to change my windshield. So we kept it at home. So if the streets were not opened, people 90% did not come to the jobs. He had the 5 televisions giving him free air. I'm sure if you ask your producer, from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., 10 hours at K24 at 9:40. From 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., all televisions in this country were airing nothing but Raila. How many did you see the president?
Well,
you cannot take that away from him. He's a newsmaker, a brand for himself. I hereby welcome him.
On the loyalty issue, the loyalty question.
And even as you come in on that, you can also speak about the official opposition, which President William Ruto, literally, rubber stamped so that Raila Odinga can actually have an office on, official opposition. When should we start having, loud conversations in Parliament about this?
The conversations are actually going on. There is supposed to be an amendment bill that is coming forward. In fact, part of why there is that pullback on the envelope is the Azimio protests, because the Kenya Kwanza side is asking themselves, why should we be seen to be giving someone his cake and actually having it and eating it alone? Have an office for someone. 2 is that even if you were to have the official leader of opposition, it doesn't have to be Raila Amolo Odinga, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. Why? Because this is a gentleman who participated in the last 2022 elections, and from the way that particular office is being framed, unless there is a proper mechanism which will actually elicit a conversation, which otherwise would be called a dialogue between the president and the former prime minister, there will be no such office. And even if that office comes to place, it will happen in the next electoral cycle, which is 2027. So this is partly why I think that many people are actually pushing for dialogue, including the religious leaders who on the night of Bomas of announcing the president actually said, you people accept this process and move on. And Azimio was there and they were asking, basically the leadership was asking, why is the church biased? Why are you being seen to be supporting one side? And even in your prayers, you're not mentioning Raila Amolo Odinga, but you're mentioning William Samoei Arap Ruto. In the last 1 week,
the role of religious leaders.
So we're already into it. In the last 1 week, the religious leadership has actually been drumming up for dialogue, and literally pushing for that particular office of leader of official opposition. Now, for that to happen, because in the manner in which the constitution is structured and our governance system, the president will not give an office to Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga just like that. In fact, Parliament will not pass an office for Raila Amolo Odinga. There has to be a mechanism within which that has to be done. And that mechanism is either through a referendum, because you are touching on the structure of the executive, or a handshake, or a dialogue, or a nyamachoma moment, you know. Now, that brings me to the role of the religious leaders. I am aware that they're actually pushing for a sit-down between the president and the former prime minister. The challenge especially is the kind of historical perspectives that we have seen with these kind of conversations, that they never tend to more or less meet the needs of the common citizen. It is always about a certain individual or certain individuals getting what they want. And in this case is actually the president, the sitting president of whatever political space, whether it's 2013 or 2007 or 2017 or now 2022. So it has to be the president and the former prime minister. The question is why, or how do we actually broaden it? Because when you do that, the president will, for example, give Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi an office and call him prime cabinet secretary. So what do you do with, for example, Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka, who will come with Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga? What do you do with the ever-silent Charity Kaluki Ngilu? I don't know where she went to, but those are names and people that you really cannot wish away. Mheshimiwa Eugene Wamalwa has been there in all these Azimio rallies, sitting there whether he says anything or nothing, but he is always present. So the question is, and he's also a leader of a political party, what do you do with him? So I'm sure that there are also many questions that people are trying to find responses to that do not really border on making the lives of the Kenyan person better, but really filling in positions for particular people, which presents to the question of loyalty. So who do you award and who don't you award? Because, for example, the president will actually fail to blink an eye because he is awarding 50 cabinet administrative secretaries against the cost of living, against our negative 9.63 trillion debt burden, against the interest rates of the Kenya shilling, and he will not care about what you talk about it. Why? Because these are his loyalists. These are people who stood by him, whether they were being abused, most of them, of course, who ran for office and lost. And so you ask yourself, so where is the value addition? What gap do they really present? But the president says, these are my loyalists. Now, on the other side of it, which is a flip of the coin, is that the former prime minister, in my view, has failed to present value for his loyalists. And that is why, for example, people like Joho will fail to attend rallies, and they'll be like, we can move on with life. The MP for Langata will actually stand in a church and say there will be no demonstrations in Langata, not to fail to say that actually his ticket was a green light from Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga, and he's had very difficult conversations, despite the fact that we now know that he's a one-term MP for Langata, because ODM might not or may not or shall not nominate him again. But then the question is, how do you deal with people who actually are there to die for you, to live for you, and to make you shine, even in places where you're not there? The former prime minister has not done that very well. And that is why, for example, in most of these positions that he is given, for example, in Eala, it is Winnie Odinga who will be nominated, and not people who have actually been on the streets fighting for Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. In Bondo, the MCA will be Raila's cousin, because she's beaten and she loses. But because you are a relative, the ticket has to be presented to this person. Now, that and so many other examples that we can give dents the spirit of loyalists. And so they are like, why must we always keep doing this? Which I think if the president gives Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga an opportunity to have a good conversation on the office of official position in whatever structure and form, I think he needs to think through his loyalists, and particularly people who are there to die for him, to live for him, including My friend here, who will say the demo was peaceful and Raila did well, he needs to watch TV47 and say that gentleman needs an award and we need to give him something. But I don't think he's done very well.
On the issue of the...
We have like around 10 minutes. I'll give you time. We have like around 10 minutes. But then, last, I want to get your point on this. The official opposition on it. Moving forward, it doesn't have to be because maybe in the next 20 years later, if we have this, kind of office, the accountability aspect of this opposition, before I get your last words, gentlemen.
Well, I think for me, is anything that is supposed to be created by the people is supposed to go to the people. So I am happy that BBI came. I was among the first people saying BBI is a framework that is going to promote bad manners, the politics of bad manners in Kenya. And I was against it from day one. I wrote an article about it. Now, President Ruto is telling us that he wants to create an office of the... It's not his mandate to create an office for the opposition if it wants a referendum. Okay? His worry should be the people in Sugoi, the people in Mandera, the people in Turkana have no food. How am I going to feed them? Creating a position for the elites is not going to add any value to our governance. And you will have insecurity. You have had now in the North Rift, the attacks by the bandits.
Yeah.
And I said, that project is going to fail. Why? You have no, like the people who go to Lodwar, go through Kitale. And there is a road that can take 5 hours. You see? So there are things that will affect this country.
You're talking about the LAPSET project?
Yes.
Okay.
So I want, personally, as a proud Kenyan, I want President Ruto to succeed. Why? If he succeeds, I will have the opportunity to thrive as a consultant. As
That
a
is
Kenyan.
looking at you smiling right now.
Yeah, it's okay because maybe I'm playing into the whims and the words he wants to hear.
The president succeed.
So what I'm saying is this: I want my president to succeed. Okay, I have a lot of respect for him. One is he has educated his children through our Kenyan system. He believes in this country. Okay, despite the antics of politics, he's a man who has raised his kids in this country, who came from a very humble background. Despite the fact that he was given an opportunity by Moi, he says that he's the one who did everything. It's okay, that's politics. Now, let us not focus on creating positions for individuals, because that is not going to resolve the high cost of living, the petrol problem, the insecurity in this country. I am proudly associated with a county called Mandera. We have the least crime rate in this country according to the National Police Service. Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, Turkana, these are pastoral communities. We have the least crime rate. Meru, Machakos, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nairobi have the highest crime rate.
Do they impact the reality of those reports?
Yes, well, everything we read and we do is in this country. So if we say we are going to say that, why do you go to a doctor? Do you know the content of the drug you're injected with? There should be some level of trust. He tells you this is good for you and then he injects. You take it, you get okay, you leave. You don't ask what is the content and take a pen. So there is some level of trust in the society. That's why you take the rider, you don't know him, whether he's a thug, you take him, the taxi guy. So there is a level of trust within human beings.
Okay.
So, President Ruto, please, mambo ya opposition, mambo hiyo tutaongea baadaye. Saa hii, unga ishuke, sukari ishuke, mafuta ishuke, alafu 2026 tuongee mambo ya 2027.
All right. Sir.
First of all, you are portraying me as a spokesperson for the.
No, you are UDA.
The same way, no. I am a believer of the hustler nation.
Yes.
I support President Ruto, and I have
who is a billionaire hustler.
I have no apology to make. Even Raila is a billionaire. If you talk about billions.
Yes, very good.
You cannot choose one side and then say the other side is not. And that's not the discussion we're here for.
Before you make your point briefly, do you support the CS's appointment?
As a hustler and the hustler nation, the difference between the hustlers and the cows, these are not awards that I invented. These are awards that were said on the floor of the house by a leading Azimio member, referring to themselves.
Okay.
The difference between the cows and the hustler nation is that we, the hustler nation, speak our mind, even when we support you. And I totally reject the appointment of the 50 cars. And so many hustler nation supporters have said so. And that doesn't mean we oppose the government of the day. Those are two different things.
Yes. The decisions.
Yeah, you get my point. Yeah. Because we care about you. We correct when it's necessary. You're a human being. You're not perfect. You can make mistakes here and there. Now, coming back to the point of the of the demos and all that discussion we're having. You see, elections are disputed after the outcome, right? We had an election. The election was done with, like I said earlier on, they went to the Supreme Court, it was done on. 6 months later, demonstrating on the streets of Nairobi, much as you have the rights to do, is totally causing confusion and trying to be self-seeker, if you ask me. Then there is this notion that people believe. Imagine being the Minister for Defense just 6 months ago and being on the streets after your government left. What kind of image do you send? Let's be honest about this, Kevin Osido and others, sincerely speaking. When you have been a minister for 10 years, and then you are side of the political divide, lost the election. Then 6 months later, you are back on the streets, bothering the government that defeated you, that came to power, in the name of fighting for Kenyans. For heaven's sake, take a break, give this government a chance, let them serve Kenyans. There's also, if you're following the conversation around what the politicians are saying and the social media, there's also a feeling that the previous regime is behind these demos.
Okay.
There's that feeling.
Okay.
And it's right people to say what they think about, what's happening around. You have had the deputy president saying, talking to the former president on TV. You have had people in Kenya Kwanza Alliance saying that, and that is being shown by the people who are on the demos. What is Eugene Wamalwa doing on the streets of Nairobi? Demonstrating, and he was a minister for defense 6 months ago. He has the right to do so, but I think he is not sending the right image.
Okay.
Yeah, he feels agitated simply because William Ruto came to power against all odds, and they cannot absorb that. Let them take a break and allow William Ruto to serve us and serve Kenyans. It's just 6 months. You don't expect ungas and petrols and all that. I'm totally against the high cost of living.
Okay.
But I am realistic that it cannot come down in 6 months by someone who just came to power the other day. Give him time, let him reorganize his government. He's in fact appointing people every day because he has not even finished setting up the government.
Okay,
so all I'm saying is, my last word is, these demos, much as they are in the constitution, much as picketing is allowed, I think Azimio should borrow a book or should borrow a leaf from Julius Malema's demonstrations.
Alas,
organize themselves.
The next 30 seconds, your last words.
We have a country to feed, a nation to put in the global world. In Africa, we are number 2 in English proficiency. We are number 6 in everything else, including health. We are among number 5 in agriculture, number 7 in education. We have a country to make sure that the citizens are going to be proud as Kenyans, and let's be a very peaceful country.
Osido, your last words.
On this particular front, I believe that His Excellency the President has more work to do, particularly in not just managing the situations and containing the challenges that Kenyans are going through, but it's purely because he is the President of the Republic of Kenya. I want to urge the gentlemen and probably the few ladies in the fold to stop playing ego games. How it is unfolding is what the Swahili would say, fali wawili wakipigana ni nyasi ndio umia. On this issue, it is the Kenyans that are hurting. And Kenyans are known, of course, to navigate around our challenges and our problems. We know what needs to happen. We want to urge our leaders to do the right thing and to be seen to be doing the right thing.
Thank you.
And particularly to give us a space to go on and do our businesses, to feed our families, and to do what leadership demands. Provide that leadership, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Kevin Osido, governance expert, Abdullahi Alas, policy analyst, and Ahmed Kadar, political analyst.